Hey everybody, Tommy here, World at War Comics, and my next special guest is Mr. Ryan Parrott. I am so excited to talk to Ryan. Big fan of the Massiverse and everything he's doing with the Atom Project. Before we get into that, though, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like bell, and if you could share this out, that would make a big difference in our channel. So we really appreciate all your support. All right, without further ado, here is Ryan as we talk about Rogue Sun, the great starting on point for anybody who has not jumped into the Massiverse or Rogue Sun. Issue 25 is already out in stores. 26 just hit. This is a perfect time to jump in if you haven't before. And then here he is writing with John Ridley, the Atom Project, which is a big piece and a big part of DC's All In. So I cannot wait. Plus, we talk about Volition and some of the other stuff that he's done in the past with Power Rangers. You're going to absolutely love this. I had a blast. Without further ado, here is Ryan and I. Hope you all enjoy. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. My next guest, Mr. Ryan Parrott, who is writing just about everything in my pull box right now, man. Congratulations on Rogue Sun, the Atom Project, man. I'm sure you're doing some other stuff that we could talk about as well, but this has been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying that. I think, what is it, a six-part series to start off with?
Yeah, six part. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then, of course, big changes coming to Rogue Sun that we could talk about, which has been a lot of fun as well. But before we jump into that, Ryan, hopefully everything's going well with you. I know you're pretty busy. Everything going good?
Yeah, can't complain. Just trying to get day to day. It's fun. I've always said it's like, as a kid, you're like, man, like if I'd have told my younger self when I was 12 or 13, like I was doing this, they would have lost their minds. But then I was like, but there's also like life. So it's not like it'd be amazing to be able to be writing comic books full time at 13. That would be the ideal version, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, then you start doing it, you're like, wow, there's like deadlines and stress, and like this wasn't part of the ideas I had when I was 13.
No, no one tells you what mortgage and credit is when you're trying to figure out how to play with your action figures. Yeah,
I mean, most comic book writers are millionaires, right?
absolutely. I mean, I'm working on it. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you. I've gotten to meet you a couple times at different cons, San Diego, I think, WonderCon maybe. But you have been making the rounds quite a bit as far as cons. Do you have a pretty big schedule this year of visiting cons?
Well, no, I had a really like tight 4 or 5 in a row that were like week to week to week, and so that was part of it. I think right now I'll be at San Diego, and I'll probably be at New York. There might be a few others. I'm talking to the people at New Orleans about going to GalaxyCon. And then my brother lives in Denver, so sometimes I try to use an opportunity to go out to to Fan Expo Denver to do that. So those are the only ones I think I know of like that are 100. Oh, I'm doing Pasadena for like one day in March. But yeah, that's right now the whole thing. And if I can, I'll go to New York because New York's
Yeah.
that's the like the best con I think in my opinion. So
Yeah, I think I mean, I love San Diego, the hustle, the bustle, but you got a lot of different things going on there from movies to manga to comics. I feel like New York is a little bit more comic centered, which is really
100%.
awesome as a comic book fan. So I agree with you. Hopefully you get down here to Dallas. So I moved to Texas. So
Oh, cool.
Fan Expo is supposed to be a pretty fun one that happens here, I think in June, if I'm not mistaken. It'll probably be hot as hell, though. I'm not sure if you want to be here at that time, but
Yeah. No,
hopefully.
no. One of my friends was like, "Hey, they should." It was like, "Do you want to go to Palm Springs Con or whatever?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"When is it?" Like July 17th. I was like, "Are you out of your mind? The books are gonna melt on the way to the convention." So,
Yeah, they don't do that one anymore. They did it for many
oh,
years.
they stopped that one. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately it stopped, which was, I lived in Hemet at the
Oh,
time,
okay.
which was pretty close to Palm Springs. And that was always a real small, intimate con, but it was fun. And
Yeah,
then they
yeah,
just stopped doing it for whatever reason.
yeah.
It might have been COVID related, to be honest, during that.
Maybe. Yeah, I know there was a bunch that kind of stopped going when COVID kind of killed. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would love to kind of go back, Ryan. I mean, storytelling obviously is an amazing skill, and some do it better than others. When in your life did you figure out storytelling was something that you really enjoyed? And was there anybody in your life that really encouraged you to go down that path, whether teacher, parent, something like that, friend?
That's funny. Yeah. Story wise, I got into comics when I had I had three stepbrothers, but two of them I lived with for a summer when I was like, I think I was like 12.
Mhm.
And that was my brother Scott was the one who introduced me to like comics. He got me into like the Punisher, and like he had like the edgy comics, like that's it was the Punisher, and I think he had some Daredevil books, and he gave me those, and so that was my introduction, was like that stuff. And then my grandfather used to take me to Inner Sanctum Comics, which is next to Chuck E. Cheese Pizza in this area. And he would go in and just go, hey, just pick out two or three that you want. So I just go look at the covers. And I remember the first one he ever bought me was the Death in the Family trade paperback with Batman holding Robin, like his body. And I was like, that I want to read that. And so that was the first comic I ever read. Like really, like the first one I ever got and read and all that stuff. I remember when I was really young, I didn't realize you had to read the captions. I don't know why. I just thought, well, that's like stuff for the editors or whatever. So I'd only read the dialogue, which would make Batman comics. I'd read Batman like 30 seconds. I'm like, why are you spending so much money on this comic? And then I read the captions. I was like, oh, this makes more sense. But yeah, I got really into that stuff, and then action figure stuff. And I really like to draw. Like I was an artist kid, and that was kind of my identity all the way through junior high and high school. Was like I was the kid who would draw. I remember I started the Dream Team, which was in when I was like in third grade, which was like one of these kid I knew had nightmares. And so I drew him a superhero. And so I go, you can be the superhero when you dream. And then everybody else wanted one too. So I drew like 20 superheroes for all the kids in my class. Um, and then I started charging for them. But so that's how I got into that stuff. So like when I went to school, I went in thinking that I was gonna be an artist. And I drew comics, and when I was in junior high with my friends and whatnot, we made some stuff. And like we just like draw them and color them, and then like just trade them off to people, and that's all we did. But like, yeah, it wasn't until I got to college and I was like, really thought that was going to be the thing. And then I was like, my stuff's. I went to a school that was like a fine arts college, and so there just wasn't any interest in. They're like, you got to work in pastels, man. You can't work in this stuff, and I think digital art was really just starting to kick in, and so the comic book store started fading a little bit, and I kind of went into the film and TV world. But to answer your question, if there was anybody who who encouraged me to be a writer, there was my sophomore English teacher, Mrs. Grabavoy, told me that I would never be a writer, and she told me, she's like, she read some of my stuff, and she was like, you're never gonna be any good at this. I think you should get into. I really hope whatever else you want to do is. And I was just like, what? I would love to see her today, because I just like it cracked me up. But to be fair, sometimes they always say like the best teachers are either the worst teachers or like the best person to motivate you is either the worst teacher or the best teacher.
Yeah.
And she was on the latter, or the former. So yeah.
That's all. So the motivation was to prove this woman
To
wrong.
prove her wrong. I'm like, fine, if you don't think I can do this. I remember one of my art teachers, I was making a color one time to paint, and she was like, you can't use that. That was like a hard orange or something like that. She's like, you can't put that on the whole. You can't use that. It's too strong. And I painted the entire canvas in orange, and then I did it. She's like, that's the best thing you did all year. Exactly. That was the
orange just to get
Yeah.
back at her. It's like
Yeah.
one of those type of things that you did.
So my entire life has been it's just based on success through spite. That's all I do. Yeah.
It seems to be working for you, man. So it seems to be
Glad to
working.
hear it.
Now, when you were creating some of these characters for friends, and then you guys started creating your characters just amongst your own, has any of that stuff that you created ever made it into anything that you've done professionally?
There was one character name that my friend Sean created that I always loved, and I haven't been able to work it in. He had a character called Neither Man. And I just thought, because he was like neither man nor whatever, and I was like, oh, that's clever. That's a neat way to take that. And I've never seen anybody use that, but I think I did it. That made that in Oberon, I had this group called the Nevermen, and that was a variation off of his neither man thing. So I stole from Sean. If you see Sean, if you see this podcast, I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
But
He's gonna ask for residuals now, man.
he might. Yeah, he totally could. Yeah.
That is awesome. And then what was your story of how you actually broke into comics the first time? So you didn't do it as an artist, right? You did it as a writer, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, right? So what was that
Yeah. So
like? Who did you talk to? What was that process of kind of breaking in?
It was kind of by accident. So when I went to film school. I left art school. I went to film school in Orange County, Chapman University, and I did pretty well there and stuff. I made short films and got some stuff in a Sundance and Cannes, and that was sort of my drive to do that. And while I was on I wrote a short film for a friend of mine, and I was as a writer on a film set. There's nothing to really do, so I was like wandering around, and they were like setting up something, and I looked down, and there was this guy sitting on the corner of this like couch, and he was editing. He had a boom pole in his like hands, and he had his laptop open, and he was working on this like weird movie, and it had looked like it looked like a superhero was like flying around. I was like, "What is that?" He goes, "Oh, it's my senior thesis." And I was like, oh, cool. He goes, it's like an ode to Watchmen. I was like, oh, that's awesome. What is it? And I go, what's your name? He's like, Kyle Higgins. And so this is before Kyle ever wrote a comic book. And so, oh crap, Mike, 1 second, my cat is stuck in my room. Hold on.
Yeah,
hey,
no worries, no worries.
Hey, go. Sorry, sorry about that. I closed the door, and the cat was like, I can't get out. I was like, yeah. Yeah. So I looked at it, was Kyle Higgins. And so we would start talking and just like being friends about talking about comics and everything. And so when he moved up to LA, he lived like probably like 15 minutes down the road from me, not even that far. And so when he was like just starting to break into comics and like pitching Marvel and DC, because he made a short film called The League that basically ended up being like, I think the Joe Quesada saw it and like sent it to all the editors, and the editors came back and said, if you ever want to do comics, let us know. And so he was pitching all around town for just getting like those first books. And so he would call me and be like, hey, I got an idea about this, or got an idea about that. And we started bouncing off ideas. And he ended up getting a few books. And then and at that time I was working as assistant at Bad Robot. So I was JJ's assistant. So I worked for him. So while during the day I'd be, working phones and picking up laundry and all that stuff. And then Kyle would be like working on, he was doing Batman Gates of Gotham and some other smaller books. And then the New 52 came, and he got Nightwing and Deathstroke in like the same week. He was like, you're going to do both. And he's like, I've never written a monthly comic, and now I'm doing two. So he was like, hey, I have to finish. And because we had to get it done by a certain date, he was like, is there any chance you would help me write the last 3 like issues of Batman Gates of Gotham just so we can get it out, because I have to double ship it. And I was like, sure. So I would go over there and work with him. And so that was how I did my first comic, was just writing that, was like with him for fun, because it was like my buddy. And then I remember I bought the 3rd issue and like brought it into work, and because my coworkers wanted to see it. And Brian Burke, who was producing Lost at the time, walked over and was like, is this yours? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, you're a writer. I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to do Star Trek comics? And I was like, he's like, we do them. I'm like, yeah, sure. Because I had no idea. I knew Star Trek. I was a big Star Trek fan, but I had no idea that that's what they want me to do. And so I met with Mike Johnson, started writing that. And then through that's how I got into Power Rangers, and the rest is history.
Now, all the stuff that you have done, because you did Firefly too, right?
I did. I just did Firefly this year. Yeah.
Yeah. The show was I love that show,
Yeah.
by the way. Incredible. As you get into these, like, are you picking things that you were like in love with growing up, or these were just opportunities, like Power Rangers, for instance? Did you grow up a big Power Ranger fan? That type of stuff?
You not. So I didn't grow up like a huge Power Ranger fan. I knew of it. I was like 13 or 14 when it came out, so I was just kind of cresting it a little bit. Like I knew like I knew who Amy Jo Johnson was. That was about it. We all did. Yeah, we all did. Yeah. So like I wasn't like seeking stuff out, but like Power Rangers came to me just because I was on a panel for licensed comic books with a bunch of other people, and one of the person who was running the panel was Daphne Plevin, who was running Power Rangers at the time. And so we had a long conversation about. So I think I remember I mentioned I didn't like Captain America: Winter Soldier because I didn't like the ending, and she threw her beer down and like ran over to me and was like, "What is wrong with you?" And then proceeded to tell me why I was 100% wrong about that movie. And because of that argument, she was like, "Hey, we're thinking about doing there's the Power Ranger movies coming out, the new one, the 2017 movie." And they're like, would you be interested in doing like a sequel comic for that? Because I'd done some licensed stuff. And I was like, sure. So I did that. And we had a really great relationship doing that. So then she came to me and was like, hey, I don't know how you feel about Go-Go. And I think Kyle was doing Power Rangers at the time because he had pitched it to me. And I remember the funny thing is he pitched it to me and I was like, is that going to work? Like, did people think people want Power Ranger comics? Yeah. And like, not having no idea that I would write 100 and something issues of it. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
You.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that was how we got that. I got that just sort of through just the happenstance of doing licensed books. And then like for like Army of Darkness and like usually it's sort of like if you do license, sometimes editors come out and they reach out to you and they're like, hey, you've done licensed work. Is there any interest? Would you have any interest in this or that? And every once in a while, if it's something that I really want to do, I will. When they came to me about Firefly, so I'll tell you like a little bit of a secret, not a huge secret, but I was originally hired to do the main line of that before Greg Pak.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't really told anybody about this because it's one of those things that just like the circumstances ultimately just didn't work out and everything sort of like went separate ways. But I got hired to do that right when I thought I was going to leave Power Rangers and go do that instead because I was like, it'd be fun. Because I was a big fan of the show, and I really was like, I want to write this. Would be so much fun. And so I ended up getting that gig, and I worked on it for a while with some editors, but then one of the editors ended up leaving. The editor that hired me left the company, and so then I suddenly was working with somebody new, and that person and I just didn't quite jive on what we wanted it to be and where I was going with it all. And so ultimately, everybody just sort of was like, maybe it's better. And also, Power Rangers was sort of like, they were like, we are going to keep doing this. Would you be interested in doing 2 books at the same time? And I was like, okay. And so I thought, okay, let's just go do that. I know I can make that work. And it would have been really hard but that was my, some whole point was like, when it left, I was like, oh man, if I don't get to do one issue of this I leave or before whatever happens. So for many months after, I was like, anytime you guys need like a one-off or something, let me know. And at the very end of of my Power Ranger run, they were like, hey, did you have any ideas? And I was like, I got one. And I pitched that to them. And then that's how we got to do the one-off. But I was so happy I finally got to do at least one issue because like I love that. I love that stuff. Well, actually, I wrote a 5-page I thought about like posting it, but I never have. I wrote a 5-page like sample comic of
Really?
like just to prove I could write the characters. That's one of my favorite things I've ever written. But just like it's just a 5-off little like adventure of like them getting into trouble, and I love it so much. So
You think that'll ever make it into print?
I don't know if I'm allowed to because they paid me for it. So like I'll have to
Oh,
find out. But if I can, I'll just put it up. Yeah, maybe because I just think it's really fun. It was just a fun way of like because they just want to know you can write the characters and do the thing, and so it's just like can I tell a story in 5 pages sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome, man. How cool is that, man? Now, when we get into like Rogue Sun, Radiant Black, and the whole massive verse, when you met Kyle, was that what he was kind of working on? When he was sitting on the couch with the boom mic and you met him for
Oh
the
no,
Oh, so that
no, no,
wasn't
no.
even a thought at all. Okay.
This was like 2000 and like gosh, this was probably like 2000 and like 10. Like this
Oh,
was a
wow.
long time ago. Yeah, I'd have to ask him. I don't even remember what year that was. That was a oh no, I know exactly what year it was. It was 2000 and it was 2008. That was when I was because there was some other stuff going on in my life at the time. Yeah, 2008 is when I met him. So he was like he was just trying to do the lead. He wanted to do film too. He was really into film and television stuff like that. Still is. And that was like all that early stuff was like all the pitches we were talking about were like his Captain America story that he did, which was like he did that, or his I'm trying to think what other ones he did. His Vision story he did, like all those little things. Those are the books and then a bunch that never went to print. Spider-Man, Wolverine stories and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, so people that haven't jumped into the Massiverse, you got to pick this up, man. This thing is awesome, man. It just gives you like the first issue of the entire universe. You'll figure it out right away. Actually, I picked this up from Golden Apple when I was in LA, and I
Oh,
got
good.
yeah, I got you guys' signature on there right there. But yeah, this thing is freaking awesome, man. If you've never jumped into the universe, this is a great way to hop in. But can you kind of walk us through like how did this whole universe develop between you and Kyle? And it's just kind of expanded into this. I mean, people are comparing it to Invincible. I think you probably get asked a bazillion times a day, when are we getting an animated series of the Massiverse? Which I'll ask the same question, and you'll probably give me the same answer Kyle did. But yeah, if you could kind of just walk through how all this came together, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, Kyle and I were working on Kyle was writing the main Power Ranger line, I was running Go Go, and we've been doing that for a while. And we did the Shattered Grid event, which was the big sort of like bringing all the different teams from all the different shows together. And right after that, I remember Kyle was like, I think I'm done. Like I don't think there's anything else I can do. And I was like, thanks for breaking all the toys and then making me have to put them all together. I put them back together. I appreciate that. But so he was like, I think I'm gonna go do I think he was not frustrated, but like there was a lot of stuff that he really, really wanted to do in Power Rangers that he just wasn't able to because you're sort of constricted by lore and canon and all these things and all and just sort of and licensors and whatnot. And so he was like, I think I want to go do my own thing, my own sort of Power Ranger style book at Image. And I was like, cool. So he went and did that. And then I took him to a USC game, and we were sitting in the stands, and he was like, the game was boring at one point, and he was just like, I'm having a really, really good time doing this book. He's like, it's really fun. There's a lot of ability. Image is really gung ho for it. They really want to try and bring superheroes back into the Image fold. I think it's gotten, their stuff's great, but like they were like trying to go back to their roots a little bit. He's like, do you have any ideas of anybody that you like a superhero book you'd ever want to do? And I said, yeah, I got one. And I pitched him the story for Rogue Sun, sort of on the cuff. And he was like, that sounds awesome. He's like, if you want to do that. And he had shown me, he's like, I got an artist for you. And he showed me Abel's work. And I was like, it looked like Sean Murphy. And I was like, no way. Like this guy's not available. He's like, yeah, he's really cool. And I was like, okay. So I sent him, like, we started emailing back and forth, and we did one version of the design of the suit. And I was like, I think it's a Night on Fire. And he sent me the design back. And I'm like, that's it. That's over. That's it. They got it. And so when that happened, we just sort of went off on a run with it. And so Kyle, and I think that what he liked about it was, I think Kyle really loves the idea of the Massiverse, was just this concept of being able to make comic books with your friends. Like, so many of us that worked on Power Rangers are friends and hang out and all this stuff and do the stuff on the weekends together. And the idea of being able to, if you've ever made an independent comic, it's really scary. It's a lot of work on you. It's so hard to get people excited about it, But we thought maybe because none of us were like Scott Snyder or Hickman or anything. We're like, maybe if we got together and made a universe together of all of a similar style of superheroes, that we could sort of like strengthen numbers kind of thing. We could all kind of help each other. We could lift each other up. We could take all the lessons we've learned from Power Rangers, about trying to make each book accessible and readable, and, do some of the crazy ideas that we wanted to do in Power Rangers that we were never able to do, and put those into our own stuff. And then just be able to grow it. And I think the thing that I love the most is like, for instance, in issue 26 of Rogue Sun that just came out, we finally were able to do like a crossover with me and Kyle. And that came because I called him. I was like, hey, can Radiant Black be in the comic? He's like, yeah, sure. And that was it. That was all we had to do. So like we could just sort of like, we can take advantage of the fact that there's no middleman, that we don't have a corporate overlord. We can just kind of do what we want to do. So that's what the Massiverse is. It's sort of a tokusatsu inspired kind of books. It's like all the characters of like, they wear helmets and they activate in superpowers. Mine's Rogue Sun is a gothic supernatural superhero set in New Orleans. Kyle's is a sci-fi sort of Power Rangers for adults show that's series that's set in Chicago. And so, we had the Dead Lucky that was in San Francisco for a little while. Then we had No One in Pittsburgh, and Infernal Red and wherever Infernal Red is right now. So like, it was just that thing of just like building a little universe where we could all kind of have our own little stories, but if we wanted to, we could have them collide together, which is what we do every year, which is the Supermassive, which is our crossover book. Yeah. So
Amazing.
That's the series and stuff like that. And if you like tokusatsu stuff, but if you like, I guess, modern, these aren't the thing that we really wanted to do. And I'm talking a lot, I apologize.
No, please, Ryan. Yeah.
Okay. I think the one thing that was like really important to us was we didn't want this to be like analog versions of, that's not the right term, but version like evil Superman, evil Batman, What If. We didn't want to do that. We weren't trying to do The Boys. We weren't trying to do like commentaries about modern day superheroes. We wanted to just make superheroes. We wanted to make like real superheroes that were like straight stories, that were not trying to sort of like riff off the other people's, like make a commentary about someone else's book. And that was the thing that we really tried really hard to do, was just try and create a cohesive universe where we could have unique characters, but we weren't sort of like aping off something else. Because I think there's a lot of that these days. There's a lot of, it's this, but it's evil Green Lantern. It's evil, or it's, it's all variations of stuff you've already seen. It's all trying to be subversive. And we just thought, well, why try to be because if it's not good, they're just going to go read the regular version. So like try and do something different. Yeah.
I do feel like we've kind of gotten in this weird place where heroes have become the villain and the villains have kind of become the hero in a lot of different stories, which,
Yeah,
I guess it's all cyclical and it'll kind of change back around over time. Like a lot of things do, right? We go
yeah,
really
totally.
grunge, then we kind of come back. I don't know what your feelings are on that too, and if you kind of notice that in comic books as well.
I think if when you well, I think you had a lot of kids who grew up on comics of the '90s, and they grew up with the trench coat wearing
Yeah, yeah.
anti-heroes. And I
Yeah.
think what happens is like those guys have all grown into 35, 40-year-old men now, and so we're either so you're doing one of two things: either you're like copying that, or you're raging against it. You know what I mean? I think that's probably what's happening. Is like I think that's why you see those cycles. It's like the kids who grew up on them eventually get into the position. Like I use Stranger Things as a perfect example. Like those kids grew up on ET and Spielberg Bamblin movies, and then they age to where they are the people getting to make the decisions, and they go, I want to do my own version of that. And I think that's what happens over and over and over again. So yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, mine was like Marv Wolfman and those type of creators in the 80s. That's where like my superheroes come from. Obviously, Frank Miller and some of that darker, gritty stuff changed comics forever. And I feel
Totally.
like that will probably be always a part of comic books just because it just did so much in a
Oh
different
yeah.
comics when it happened. Obviously Watchmen as well and some of those other comics. But yeah, that's awesome, man. Um, Talk a little bit because you're obviously you're doing things for DC Comics. You've done things for like Power Rangers, which is IP owned by somebody else, and here you are creating your own IP. With Kyle and everybody else that's part of this group. Can you talk about the importance? And we're seeing a lot of, and I don't want to go negative or anything, but if you're on Twitter and you're watching what's going on with Marvel and Pay and all this other crazy stuff that's going on, the one thing that I think everyone agrees on is one, we love these characters and we want great stories around them. But two, it's really important as a creator that you own something that you're creating. Can you kind of talk about that and where you stand on that and how important it is to you?
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been like when I first started off, it was all licensed work like that. So I always knew that I was only going to be renting these characters, and the fun part is I got to come in and maybe try and create a variation on like make Ranger Slayer for the Power Ranger universe, or make the new Green Ranger or the Omega Rangers. Those were things of me just riffing off of the stuff that I loved as a kid. It's fan fiction in a lot of ways. It's just I get paid to do it.
Yeah.
And then if it's good enough, what I love about it is if it's good enough, it's like a brick that gets put into the wall of the canon, and now it's part of that. And so I help build that wall for other fans, and then they can build up off of that. And I love doing that. Half the fun for me in doing some of those early license book was like for instance when I got to finish I did issue 100 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then I handed it off to Melissa Flores, and Melissa Flores has sort of taken those same characters and kind of run with them, and it's fun because I get to be a fan again. I get to sit back and read these stories and go, oh, that's not what I would have done, but that's way smarter than what I would have done, and that part. So the early days, like, and I knew for me, I never got upset about that because, like, to me, like, those weren't my characters anyways. I just came in and helped out a little bit and then moved on, right? I rented the place. So that's how I felt about some of that early stuff. And then when you go, but I will say, like, when you get to when the option to do something at Image and create it and own it myself, I was like, what I liked about that was it wasn't so much like the money or the TV rights or any of that stuff. And I know that stuff's important because there's a lot of lucrative. That's where the long that's like life money. But the thing that I liked about it was I liked that I was able to control it. I liked that I was going to be the one that would be able to sort of like decide if it turned into an audiobook, or if it turned into an action figure, or if it turned into any other a card game or whatever, is that I would get a say in what that was. And when you, as opposed to when you work for the big two, you get to make a lot of really important creative decisions early, but then there's other decisions that are made without you that you're just like, oh, I would not have done that. I wish I could have done that. And if that happens enough times, I think that's where the frustration for a lot of creators comes from. It's just they just wish they could be consulted about why things are done, and no one wants to do that. So that's the nice thing about the Massiverse was that we control it, we own it. We're small enough to be able to sort of like dictate stuff. If somebody wants to use Rogue Sun in a book, or they make a card thing, they gotta run it by me first, and I get to say, I like those flames. I don't like that flames. He would never say that. Like that kind of stuff. And so like I think that's part of it. And I think also this is a larger thing, but like I can see how it could be frustrating if you created a character like Deadpool or Thanos or somebody, and you're seeing this thing get made into statues and movies
Billion
and
dollar movies, yeah.
yeah, like being the making $1 billion, and you're just like, I don't see a dime from that. Like that's I think that there's a frustration in that because it feels like shouldn't you reward the person that actually created the thing? And there just doesn't seem to be that level of thought. But to be fair, when you do those jobs, they tell you it's a work for hire job, and I think that's the double edged sword of it all. It's like we want the job because it helps us build our name and gets up and creates a bigger fan base, and those people will come along and come to hopefully your other creator and stuff that you do own. But sometimes it's frustrating to watch empires seemingly built on the ideas that you came up with by yourself in your one bedroom apartment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I see so many amazing creators that have really gone hard on the creator owned side. I mean, you look at what Jeff Johns is doing right now, Ghost Machine. He's like built this all-star team too of people, Peter Tomasi, and I mean, you could go Francis Manapul and Jason Fabok. It's insane what they're doing over there.
Very frank and
And
yeah.
yeah, exactly, Gary Frank. They this 20 plus years of building out the DC, and now he's taken all of that knowledge and all that experience doing. I feel like what you guys are doing is very similar to that with all these different characters and the world building that you're building around that. What is the next step when you do get to that point where you do have an established universe, you have different characters that play major roles within this universe? Like, what is that next step for the Massiverse as you are writing your, monthly issues? Is the goal to have animation? Is the goal to have action figures, or you're just patient when it happens type thing, or is that something you're actively like on your plans for the next couple of years?
So one of the things that we said when we first started doing, because we had I remember where we were. We were at a restaurant in Chicago, I think, and we started talking about when we discovered, oh, we're gonna try and make this a shared universe. One of the things that we said is that I remember I was just like, I don't want to, like, let's not put the cart in front of the horse. And I feel like a lot of comic book companies, when they do their shared universe or they create their thing, it's always this, they try and hit you with scale real fast, and they're just like, we're going to do these 27 books, and they're going to build to this event, and this event's going to build off into the Spillet event. And I'm just like, dude, you don't even have a successful comic book yet.
Yeah.
Like, my wife said something really smart. She's like, what she says, the minute you try and tell an audience what they're gonna like, they will tell you they will tell you what they like. You don't tell an audience what they're gonna like. And so I always think about that. And so one of the things we talked about early was, like, we're not, like, the goal isn't to make 27 comic book. It's not to build as many stories and like try and build 27 titles into a universe. It's to tell a good story. It's to do, like, our goal was Radiant Black is its own story. You can pick up volume one, you can read it all the way through, and you never have to read another issue, and never have to read anything, and you get it. You understand everything. And the same thing with Rogue Sun, the same thing with Inferno Go Red, all that. We just want to say, write a good comic book, write a story, tell the story the way you want it, and then let the audience dictate whether or not this thing is worth their interest in the level. And also try and keep it scalable so that people don't have to spend $50 a month to just keep up with everything, because I know, as a person who buys comic books, I don't have that kind of money either. So when it comes to, like, the overall goal, the goal we've always said from the beginning was just write a good story, and let the story dictate, the audience will dictate the size of the story. And so I knew, but the one thing I will say, Kyle is very, very ambitious. God bless him. I am not. I'm very much like, I just want to write my comic books. And he's like, we're going to do this. We're going to be an animated short. We're going to do like all the quirky stuff that he's come up with, the marketing stuff, I thought was really kind of fun. But the reality was, it all came out of not out of trying to be like, look at us. It was just more like, if we aren't Nightwing, we aren't Batman, we aren't Spider-Man. If you want to have people take a look at your book, you're gonna have to do something that they can't do in the big two, because they have too many people. So all that stuff, like the audio, the stuff we do on TikTok, the stuff, the audio plays, the card game, that stuff's kind of designed to just to give you stuff that we can do because we are small scale, because we have a small group of people, and we can do stuff that would require a crazy amount of approval. So we just try to do that stuff out there. So I mean, I think as we all feel like, I love animated movies. I would love a Rogue Sun animated movie. I'd love a Radiant Black. I'd love a Massiverse TV show. That stuff would all be fun. But I think we want to just make sure that we tell the best story we have and then let the audience dictate the size of the story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know how often you're like on Reddit and you're in some of those chats that are specifically for Rogue Sun and Radiant Black, but
I got a burner. I got a burner. No, I'm
yeah, yeah,
kidding.
you got to burn it. I mean, people are making their own action figures, which is
Oh,
awesome.
cool.
Rogue Sun and Radiant Black. So I definitely feel that what you have all built is very close to being able to do some of those things. I understand the timing, and I think a lot of people don't realize the cost that goes behind producing
Yeah.
something like that. It's enormous, especially animation. It's not cheap, I
No.
assume. So you got to be at a certain level of success or have backing to
Yeah.
be able to produce something like that, which is scary, right?
It
Because the
is.
last thing you want to do is either give up a portion of what you own or, you know, take on like this
Yeah.
burden and then
And
hopefully
also just
grow enough to
to do
where
it
it's
right.
profitable. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is just to do it right. Like, you
Yeah.
don't want to just jump in because someone's excited about making an action figure because you could end up with a piece of shit. No, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to make a bad action figure. You want to do the thing that looks cool and the thing that I want to put up on my mantle. So it's like we have had people talk to us about things, and
Yeah.
we were just like, is it right for us to do that at this stage, or is that what we think? Like, is that something I'd be excited about? Like, that's the stuff that like the card game, for instance, the card game we came up with that we did. Those guys came to us and they were just like, we really think this is fun. We really like the ability to do this. It's a low risk, high reward. And it was like, and we looked at and we played the game. I was like, this is a pretty fun game. Let's try it. And so that's kind of how that stuff happens. And I think it really just does come. We take everything on sort of a case by case basis. There's no grand plan. It's more like,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be nice if, and if that feels like it's a nice thing that's additive to the brand and feels like it won't make us look stupid, we'll probably do it. So
Yeah. Well, everybody involved has done such an amazing job building out this universe. It's definitely one of the most popular, I think, indie universes that have been created over the last, 10 years or so. So congratulations on that for everything that you're all doing because it's
thank
a
you.
lot of fun. I love the Massiverse and I own everything. So I cannot wait to see what comes next, man, because I do feel with the momentum and successful things like an Invincible, I think shines a bigger light on the Massiverse and other indies as well, and realize like, man, there's a lot of really good stuff out there outside of the big two, which normally dominate as they should, right? They got 80, 90 years in front of everybody. So congratulations. Sorry about all the pressure the fans are giving you guys to do all this crazy stuff, but it's a
No,
good place to be, right? Because that just means
yeah.
people are excited.
Oh no, the fans are awesome. I have I it was really fun because when I first started doing conventions, a lot of stuff people come up to me and they go, "Oh, I like your Power Rangers," and it's cool, which is nice. I love when people come up to me and say they like the Power Rangers, and like I'm very proud of that work, and I always will be. I'll never be Madonna, and then I'm like not gonna sing like a virgin anymore, and that's not me. But it is really cool when people come up to you and they're like, "Hey, I read Rogue Sun. It's my favorite book I'm reading this month. I like that character. I like him more than Radiant Black." I'm kidding, but that's amazing because like I remember being so you said you Marv Wolfman was somebody. I remember when I was like 7 years old meeting Marv Wolfman
Oh, wow.
and thinking he might have actually been a wolf man because I was seven and didn't know the difference.
Exactly.
But like I remember like meeting him and thinking about like when I was 14, I was 14, that's when all of the Image books came out, like Spawn and Wildcats and Savage Dragon, and I bought all of them. I bought every single one of them, and I loved them because I was so excited because I was like an artist kid, and I was like all of them leaving. All my favorite artists just went and made their own stuff, and I'm like, you can do that? You can just go make your own comics? And it was mind blowing to me. And so like the fact that like I've gotten to do stuff with like I've talked to these guys and like and they treat me like a contemporary. They're like, oh hey, like Todd McFarlane came down the walkway the other day and he's like, oh I've heard of Rogue Sun, and you could have knocked me over with a feather, man. I was like, there's no way Todd McFarlane's ever heard of Rogue Sun, and like I was like, and so like that stuff's such a crazy like amazing feeling that so I get really super excited about that when anybody comes up to me and says, I've read your book. I really liked it. One guy came up to me and we did issue 7 of Rogue Sun was Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah.
And a kid came up to me and our guy came up to me. He's like, that's my favorite comic book I've ever read in my entire life. And I was like, your entire life? He's like, best one I've ever read, most fun I've ever had. That was the best. The twist in that is so cool. I'll never forget that. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I'm done. I just dropped the mic and I'm out, guys. That's it. I don't have to make any more comics. So like that starts really fun, and so it's really nice when people like the Massiverse and get excited because I'm just trying to like pay forward the same excitement I had when I was 14 and 15 and loving comic books too. We're all fans. We're just like Scott, Kyle and me. We love comics too. We just want to make stuff that gets people as excited. And like you said, like it's it's a little bit of a cynical time, I think, in comic books sometimes, especially with some of the big two stuff, unfortunately, because that's just the way that it's just the way the internet and everything's kind of worked. And so it's nice to still be hopefully a non-cynical comic and just one that just like if you like old-fashioned comic books, that's what we're trying to give you.
Yeah, no, definitely happening, definitely coming across, and definitely a big fan because of that.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about Adam Project. What is it like working with a John Ridley? I mean, that's
Uh,
insane, man. I mean, dude, this is a Academy Award winning,
yeah.
Oscar winning. I mean, holy crap,
Not
bro.
intimidating at all. That's not intimidating at all.
Not at all, right?
He wears it on a gold chain around his neck at all times, so it's a little distracting. But no, it was really interesting because I developed that idea with Matt Levine, who was an editor at DC for a while because he was one of my editors at Boom, and we were like he came to me and he was like, hey, like we're thinking about doing something with the Atom that's part of this next thing. It'll probably be like a small side book. It probably won't be that important, whatever. And I'm like, okay. So we batted around a bunch of ideas for a few months. Like then we were trying stuff, and then he came to me one day. He's like, hey, so you remember that little project we were trying to play with? He's like, so Jim Lee, we pitched it to Jim, and Jim really likes it. And then we pitched it to Mark, and Mark really likes it. And they kind of want it to be a little bit more important. And they were like, and we want John Ridley to write it with you. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? The Academy Award winning John Ridley? They're like, yeah. So I got on the phone with John, and John and I started spitballing ideas. And it was his actual idea to make, because at that point it was just an Adam, it was just a Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer book. It wasn't, and
Yeah,
we
he
had
wasn't
ideas.
part of it, right?
Yeah, Captain Adam wasn't a part of it. And so it was actually John's idea. He's like, I think it would really help the book if Captain Adam is the center of the book. And the idea is that he had lost his powers and he's the guy that they're trying to repower. And the minute he said that, the whole book sort of fell into place for me. And that was such a huge change in the thing. And it's so funny to think that the idea that Captain Adam wouldn't have been in the book at all is insane to me now. But
Yeah. I can't even imagine without it, to be honest, after you read it.
was sorry?
I couldn't even imagine what the book
Oh
would be
no,
like without him now that I've read it, right?
not at all. I made a joke that I was talking to Mike Perkins, the artist, today, and I made a joke. I was like, I think I've had you do 12 splashes of Captain Atom. And it's just like, I just really like watching you draw Captain Atom at like full power and flying around and stuff. And so like, that's my joke is like, I'm just writing towards splash pages. But that's where it came from. It was just this idea of doing that. And when John added that thing, because he's so good at understanding character and emotion and how to personify those things in a book, it just got incredible and a lot more fun to read. And then became very important to the continuity of the DC universe, which is very weird for somebody who is like my first ever DC proper book. It's very weird.
No, it's extremely important to everything that's going on
Yeah.
around Madden and Waller, everything that took place. Right now, so I grew up, I love comic books. I've always been more of a DC person than a Marvel person, but I obviously love Incredible Hulk. I love Marvel, so it's not that I
Right.
don't like it. I've always been a DC guy.
You
And
can like both. It's okay. You can
yeah,
like
it's
both of
okay
them.
to like
Yeah.
both, right? It's
I
okay.
know some people think you can't, but you can. Yeah.
Yeah, trust me, I do. I have Marvel on my pull list. But I've always been more of a DC character. I don't know if it's the more godlike portions of the characters. I don't know. But I do love it. I will tell you, All In and what's happening with the Absolute, I could not be more excited, right? I've gone through so many changes over the last 20 years with DC. New 52 pissed off everybody, and then it pissed off everybody that it ended because it was really good. I mean, what
Yeah.
Scott did with Batman, it's just incredible, right? Court of Owls. I mean, there's so many amazing good stories what Jeff Johns did. And then we kind of went through this cycle where we started making changes again, and it wasn't as fun as a DC fan. We were kind of flopping a little bit. And then all of a sudden, All In comes in, and I was just kind of skeptical, going, man, here we go again, changing everything. Um, I am so all in on all in. The writing like has been so uplifted. I think the storytelling is like at a different level. I just feel like maybe Jim Lee and all of you that are part of this button was hit, and I mean the titles that are coming out are a lot of fun. I hope the Adam Project actually goes on longer or gets like a second season of it because it has played a pivotal role. I like that look. I like that nod. That gives me good feelings. We'll stop right there so I don't get you in trouble. But yeah, it's been huge, man. The New Gods with Ram V and how that is going to also be pivotal book of bringing maybe the Absolute and All In together at some point. Like it is so much fun right now. I don't know if you as a writer that's involved are feeling that from fans, but I could tell you last week in the top 10 comics for that week, 7 of the 10 were DC, and that hasn't happened in a long time
Long
as a
time.
DC fan, right? It's
Yeah.
dominated by Marvel, man.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How are you sensing it from fans? Are you feeling like people are like all in on this as well and really excited?
I think this is just from my perspective, nothing for DC or any of that stuff. I'm not speaking for anybody at the company. I
Yeah.
will say I do think there's been some surprise at how well received the Absolute line has been. I think I remember hearing about when they were going to do that, and I was like, oh, okay, that could work. I was like, it was basically what it, everybody was calling it the Marvel. It was the DC Ultimates,
Yeah.
and like the way that it's popped. But I do think like each one of those books is really has a really unique point of view, has really done a good job of like taking the concept of the character, sort of inverting it, flipping it, and all that stuff, and they feel fresh, they feel interesting, they feel unique. The Martian Manhunter thing is really crazy and fun, and like so, like I really love all of that stuff. And I think the what's nice about that is because of the success of that, I think it's probably forced a lot of the mainline DC books to try and raise their game a little bit so they don't get lost in the thing. And so I know, talk like it's been really interesting for me to talk to Mark Wade and have him tell me stuff that he's doing and seeing how that's planned out and stuff and being a part of it's the weirdest thing is being a part of it. The weirdest part is like making decisions that are like that like I feel like I'm a rock in the river and I drop the rock and the river just like recorrects a little bit. I'm like, did I do that? So like there's like those little moments are really cool. So I do think it's like that rising tide, raises all boats. I think that's the thing is like Absolute Line has been so well received and so it's such a fresh place to come in. People who can just come in, it's really easy. I could give that book to my dad, any one of those books to my dad, and my dad would be able to read them. And I feel like that's always really exciting. That can't last forever because obviously there's a point where like if you lose track of everything. But I think DC has been really smart about trying to take advantage of that. And a lot of the stuff you were just pitching me, I'm like stuff that I knew. There's some stuff that you were saying that I was like, oh, I didn't know that's out. Okay, cool. Like
Yeah,
there's some
yeah,
stuff. So I never because we never know what like is being revealed to the public and when
for sure.
sometimes. So that's how we get into trouble because we're like, you know about that. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so like I really love it. I'm very very happy. I am so amazingly like grateful to have been a part of any of this because it's so as a fan, it's just like it's fun and exciting, and I get to. It's exciting for me because my excitement's the same as yours. It's just a little ahead because I
Yeah,
have to read it in real time and be like, oh, that's what's happening. Okay,
yeah.
cool. But then I don't get to tell anybody. I'm like, I can't tell anybody. So that part's fun. So yeah, I'm really happy you guys are liking. I'm really happy that the fans are out there enjoying it. Hopefully that ripples into both books. I mean, both companies. I hope Marvel
Yeah.
sees all that excitement and raises their game as well. Not to say that it's not, but just that idea of like everybody's trying to just do stuff that makes people excited and gets people back into comic books because I think I as much as I love the movies, the comics are always the that's the dog, not the tail. So.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. As you look at your career moving forward, obviously you have Rogue Sun, the Massiverse, everything you're building there. If you look at DC and Marvel, are there characters that you have a goal to like, if I could get an opportunity to write that just because I grew up loving that character so much? Do you think like that at all? And is there like a character that you want to throw out into the Marvel DC universe?
Yeah, I think I'd be lying if I said that there weren't characters that I have like in the back of my mind that I would do. Like the Ninja Turtles were somebody that I always wanted to do. It's crazy that I've been able to do it twice and be a part of that. That's so much fun. I'll never turn down writing them. Um, I will say like I have some stories that I really would like to tell for certain characters. I have a Superman story that I've been dying to do since like I was a little kid. That is like that I keep looking at and no one's done. And I'm like, oh my God, I really want to do that. Like I pitched that to every one of my friends after a few drinks. I'm like, what about this? And everyone's like, you should do that. I'm like, I know, it'll be fun. Yeah. But so that's one that's down the line I really love. Just because I mean, I not to look, this sounds like I'm diminishing of the Superman work, I'm not. But like the thing that I've always thought about Superman that I really love is like, or I've always thought about is like, if I gave you like a list of like, if I asked you today, like, what are the Mount Rushmore of Batman books, right? You'd tell me Court of Owls, you'd tell me Long Halloween, you'd tell
Gosh,
me Death
Long
of the Family,
Halloween. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But the funny thing is like those are all just Batman stories of him being Batman. But if I told you what are the like the Mount Rushmore stories of Superman, they're almost always his origin or his death.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of like Superman just being Superman and defending Metropolis and like there's not a lot of great. There are some really great ones. I love Up in the Air by Tom King. There's a lot of good stuff in there. For Superman and Man for All Seasons, that's a really great book. Like they're out there, but they don't have a lot of it. And so I really want to do just a straight Superman story of him being Superman. It's not his origin story again. It's not an Elseworlds. He's not dying. It's just Superman being Superman, which is crazy because he's literally the oldest superhero in the world.
Yeah, exactly. He started it all.
Yeah, so that's the one that I get really excited about. And there's a few other ones that I do. Like there's some side character stuff like that. I think you'd be crazy to ask. I think every superhero, every writer would love all the big ones, right? They'd love to do Spider-Man and Batman and stuff, like just to do those. But also it's like but I would say I wouldn't do it unless I had a take that I thought was worth it. Like I wouldn't just do it so I can just play in Gotham or just go and be with Flash. Like I would have to have a story that I really felt was important and said something and was doing something that the other books hadn't done before. Because otherwise, I don't want to do a book that's just going to be treadmilling what other people have done. So
Yeah. It's funny. I had Ram V on a couple weeks ago, and he just wrote. I think it's a 5-part series for Resurrection Man. So we got the first issue. That story was never meant for Resurrection Man. He wrote that story and he loved that story. And when he found out who Resurrection Man was, he's going, this is the perfect story for that character. Do you
yeah.
do that as well? Is that like a normal thing for a lot of writing? Like, do you have stories and that you're like, man, I got to find the right character that makes sense for this story? Or are you always like me? I would like think of my favorite characters and then try and build a story around my favorite characters. I don't know how
Um,
you did that.
it kind of comes both ways. I will say just one thing about Ram V.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was the first time I had dinner with him, and we sat across from each other for an hour and a half. He was like my favorite guy talking to. I love talking to him. And
He's
then
awesome.
we walked out. It was one of those places that was really loud, so you couldn't hear anybody's name. So we walked out. It was like with 8 other people. We walk out. I'm like, hey, I'm like, by the way, I'm Ryan. He goes, I'm Ram. And I go, you're not Ram V. And he's like, yeah. I was like, holy shit. And it was like, I couldn't have talked to you the whole evening. I would have been so nervous if I'd known that was you. And he was like, he's the nicest guy too. And I was like, oh my God. But yeah, so Rams, that was my introduction to Ram because I just didn't know who he looked like. And I was like, this guy's so cool. This guy should work in comics. We'd be great in comics. Yeah, but he was doing just fine. But I think to answer your question, yeah, I think there's moments where you have ideas that like, to be fair, there are some ideas that can work for multiple characters. And I think the fun part is when you have an idea for a character and then when you go, well, that character's not really working, or somebody comes to you and is like, hey, do you have any takes on such and such a character? And you go, well, wait a minute, if I use this story and I pivoted it just a little bit, suddenly it becomes more nuanced. Suddenly it becomes I'm saying something completely different about the thing, and it can actually be better than the thing that you were sort of aping off to start with. So I think it works both ways. There are moments when I've sat down and really dug into a character and tried to figure out what's something that hasn't been explored about them, what's something that we've taken for granted, what's for something that that we've never really like thought about, or if we put them in a new setting, how does that change who they are? And then there's times where you just had an idea or something really personal happened to you. It was like, I wonder how they would deal with this. And then when you obviously I think it happens a lot with writers when they go through something major like a wedding or a birth or death, and then they look at a character and they're feeling all those feelings, and I feel like they use that character as sort of a conduit with which to like sort of really work through those ideas, and that's where you can get some really great stuff. I think Tom King's Miracle Man I think is
Yeah.
was something that's one of those examples of he was going through something. I don't know this for certain, but I'm having read the book. Like he had an idea of something he wanted to talk about. He found this character, and those two things meshed in a way that I think is like art in
Yeah.
like the best form. So yeah.
For sure, for sure. Incredible, man. Well, Kyle, man, one more last thing. A lot of people don't realize, maybe they haven't read this yet, but just talk to me really quickly about Volition. I know we talked a little bit before we hit the
Right.
record button. Just the idea around it, I love it. The rust and everything that they were fighting through. Is it something that you think you'll ever revisit, or like what does that look like?
Um, Yeah, so that was my first ever creator-owned book that I sold. I was doing it at Aftershock. I think it was like the fourth book that they bought and the 92nd one to come out because of various crazy things that happened. So it was like they bought my book. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get in the first wave, and then 3 years go by, and then it finally came out just because of logistics and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the idea. My whole pitch was I love the idea of doing like a robots on the run story of just like two, like two good robot, like not C3PO and R2D2 kind of like on the run, trying two robots who basically were about to die, going to find their creator. And then but then I started thinking about like, well, what's the thing that they're running from? And then I thought, wouldn't it be crazy if we had artificial intelligence and then there was something that was destroying it, that was reverting them back into the machines that they were, and how scary that idea would be, and how would people feel about that? And what would that be like? Because we always worry about the birth of AI, but when I don't ever really see anything about the death of AI and what would happen if that suddenly went away. And that part I thought was a really interesting conversation. And here's the thing: I wrote that what 7, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
or I don't even know how long. It's that conversation's changed a lot in the last 8 years.
Changed a lot.
The death of AI might be something we're all aiming for here
You,
pretty
you,
soon.
you you might be kind of like a Simpsons writer
Exactly.
in another
Yeah.
10 years based off of this book, man.
Yeah. But I do think, like, I don't know if I'll ever revisit Volition again in the story of it all,
Yeah.
but I guarantee there will be things in the world of sci-fi that I will probably play in that same sandbox with other stories and stuff like that. Just because that's the thing with robots is they're just so malleable. You can do any type of story with them, and I'm sure I'll do another robot story at some point. Yeah.
Well, Kyle, man, I can't. I mean, Ryan. Sorry, we were just talking about Kyle.
Okay. I
Ryan,
do it all the time. Yeah.
no, no, no. Sorry, but Ryan, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to have you on, man. I hope this isn't the last time, man. I absolutely had a blast. Congratulations on everything going on with Rogue Sun. Perfect time. I know 26 just came out, but if you're new to this world, man, 25 is a great jumping on point for anybody that wants to get into it for the first time. It is a phenomenal comic book. So congratulations with that. And in this story, there could be some changes that are taking place that I think you'll enjoy. And then obviously, you and John writing the Atom Project. So far, 5 issues. We'll see where it goes after that. I won't look at your face. But yeah, this is awesome. And I'm sure anything else that we didn't mention that you would like to kind of talk about real quick?
No, that's it pretty much. I would just to go off what you said. Rogue Sun is sort of the passion project right now. It's the thing I'm putting most of my effort into. It at 25 is a jumping on point. If you've never read any of the volumes, it is a book you can pick up tomorrow if you want to just start keeping up with it. 26 is a crossover with Radiant Black, so we get to see those. And they've actually met 3 other times before, but have never met before, which will make more sense when you read the book. But you can pick up Rogue Sun or any of the Massiverse titles from Volume 1 and read them straight through. You don't have to read any of the other ones if you don't want to. It's just the way that we try to make everything available, and also, you make it easy to read because, having worked on Power Rangers, if you've ever had to try and tell someone the reading order of Power Rangers, it takes a spreadsheet and a lot of time and patience. I had another book just recently come out from Boom that I'm very proud of called Vicarious.
Oh, that's right. Vicarious. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
It's all good. It
Yeah.
was a sci-fi story about a world where people, there's a group called proxies who are sort of these young, sort of attractive hustlers who basically allow you to, through an implant, like see the world through their eyes, feel everything they do, see everything they do. And the idea is that they sell their bodies to go do crazy things. So if you want to go, if you wanted to go, skydiving, but you're too afraid, you could hire a proxy to do that. And so there's a very sort of weird, sorted world of watching this guy named Justin Bright, who goes from being sort of a no one to a someone. And that book just came out. The whole run of that is a 6-issue miniseries that's out from Boom. That's about it right now. Everything. I mean, I'm sure that there's other stuff that I can't talk about that I'm working on that'll be out during this year. I'm sure we'll have other stuff, but yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about that if the opportunity presents itself.
Absolutely. Man, Ryan, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your week, my friend. And man, cannot wait to continue reading, especially Rogue Sun. I love that title. So
Awesome, man.
congratulations on all your success. Well deserved.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, all right. Talk soon, my friend.
Okay.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.